Well, Dr. James Boyes is Professor of International Politics at the American International University in London. He's in the studio with us. All the usual suspects there: fresh sanctions against Iran if necessary, justification of going into Iraq, putting extra pressure on Zimbabwe. Perhaps music to George Bush's ears, though, do you think will be the extra troops that Gordon Brown has said will be going to Afghanistan?
Possibly. This is also an awful lot of trying to cover people's rear ends at this point, trying to make sure that there's troops going into Afghanistan is important political coverage. You heard the President, the Prime Minister saying, we can't let politics come into this. When politicians start saying that, I always start running for cover, because of course politics is going to come into any decision about troop deployments, especially in an election year in America.
Contrary to what we might have thought over the weekend, he claims that they're on the same page over troop drawdown in Iraq, but as we've seen with Afghanistan, even years later, an increase in troop numbers can be necessary, as we're seeing in Afghanistan.
Absolutely. Now, the politicians will tell you they're reacting to the requirements on the ground from their commanders, for example. However, clearly there's a political dimension to all this. They might talk about being on the same page. Gordon Brown, the British government, want to get out of Iraq. I'm no doubt about that. The Americans merely want to draw down and leave this to be dealt with by the succeeding administration in Washington come January.
History will be the judge, he says, of the foreign policy. But the most impassioned he became was at the end, wasn't it? Talking about whether the North Korean experience had actually galvanised Iran into pursuing its own nuclear ambitions.
Yeah. I mean, what Bush is trying to do here, I think, is kick the legacy issue into the long grass. Clearly, if he's based upon today's figures, it's going to be a damning indictment of his administration. The North Korean situation has been a problem for not only this administration, but for the Clinton administration previously, and will clearly be a problem for the incoming administration come January.
I mean, he said it's been mooted that this is my last visit. We'll see. I might be back. Did it feel like a swan song visit to London to you?
I think there'll be an awful lot of people in this country, not only academics, media and politicians, who would be quite glad to see that this was the last trip of George W. Bush. And in the words of the old Labour song, hopefully things can only get better for transatlantic relations.
Well, we had an email from, a text message from Daniel in York. He says, Bush and Brown remind me of a Neil Simon play, The Sunshine Boys. It's about two has-beens who struggle to give one last big performance, and of course they fail. I mean, nobody's necessarily saying that about Gordon Brown, but many people have been saying over the weekend, this is a lame duck presidency. Very tempting for Gordon Brown and the other European leaders to be looking past him at this point.
Well, I suggest they already are. I mean, there's no doubt about it. One does not refuse a visit from the President of the United States. And it's perhaps important to distinguish here between the person who is President and the office of the President. George Bush is the President, but will not be for much longer. So they're looking forward already to the next administration, whilst not wanting to be too rude to the outgoing administration.
But they have got to keep the ball up in the air till the new year, when he finally steps down, and we know who the next president is. I mean, so many of the policies that they may have talked about during this visit, I mean, will they just be kicked into the long grass? One
of the things you can hear a lot about in the coming months is this idea of change in American foreign policy. History, however, dictates that what you get more often is continuity. No matter who the next American president is, there will be troops in Iraq, there will be troops in Afghanistan, there will be a continuation of American foreign policy. What will change will be the nuance in particular, and that might be about all.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's very good to have you here with us for your analysis this morning. Dr. James Boyes, Professor of International Politics at the American International University.